All right, folks, welcome back to the Contrarians. We've got another esteemed panel here put together, and we're going to tackle the questions a little bit loose, but this idea of we see a lot of our old classic rock bands, as these bands get older, over time, they replace a lot of members in the band. Sometimes we're fine with it. Sometimes it's big news, like think back to when ACDC needed a new singer. And sometimes it just becomes a bridge too far. We say, okay, enough already. I don't think you're a legitimate band anymore. So, we're applauding them. But then sometimes at some point, we don't think this band should continue this way. It's not a legitimate situation. When we frame this, we talked a little bit about when some of these original members or some of these newer members that we still think of as the new guy, as Rush would kid Neil Peart the whole time, right? He's the new guy. Some of these guys have been around longer than the original, who you think is and the absolute classic of the lineup, sort of thing. So we'll address that as well as we go. So we're going to keep it loose, but yeah, this is just basically about when we cry foul on these replacement members and when we're still cheering them on, kind of thing. So without further ado, let's go over to Bill. Bill, tell us what you've got.
All right, thank you, Martin. You already took my Rush Neil Peart joke right out from under me. That's what I was going to lead with. So.
Sorry about that.
All right. Seriously though, I'm just going to set my criteria here for legitimacy, and then I'm going to ignore my own rules.
Okay.
Number one, did they write and record new material, and if so, how much? Number two, was there a natural progression of band members? Like, say, the revolving door of Yes, or was someone hired to restart a classic band? Mm-hmm. Number three, do they add anything creatively, or are they just a gun for hire live cover band member, basically?
Right.
So those are my three things I typically looked at here. But again, it's on a case-by-case basis. Blue Oyster Cult was one of the bands that was mentioned in the subheading on this topic. And, well, Recchia and Jules have been in the band for 20 years now. Danny Miranda has been there between his tenures, approximately 16, 17 years. So these guys are pretty legit as far as the amount of time. They have had one album. Essentially, well, Danny's been on more than one, but the other two guys have had the one comeback album, The Symbol Remains. In this case, Albert Bouchard has always been my favorite BOC member. But because BOC was such a democratic band all along, there was no one dominant member that was required to be there for me. So I was fine with little bits of in and out along the way. As long as you at least have a couple of the core guys there, it's still legit to me. Uriah Heep is a big one.
Bill, before you go on, so at every band, why don't we don't say anything, but just give a thumbs up or a thumbs down whether you're on board with the band in this way. So how about Blue Oyster Cult? Are you everybody? Okay, all right. So move on to Heep.
All right, Uriah Heep. Phil Lanzon and Bernie Shaw have been there for 38 years. That's a long time, and they've put out many albums with that lineup. Phil in particular has been part of the writing process, which is important to me. And they've kind of gone on to become their own thing while still honoring the classic band. So I think those guys are absolutely legit. They put out quality albums to this day. So, yeah, I'm definitely on board with Heep.
What do you guys think? Thumbs up on Heep? Oh, there we go. We got a sideways on Parish. He'll have to explain himself later.
I will do.
Yeah.
My third pro is Marillion with Steve Hogarth, who has been in the band for 35 years now. A lot of hardcore old school fans prefer the Fish era from the 80s. This single membership change really changed the sound of the band a lot, and I think for the better. I prefer this era, so that's probably why I'm cool with it. I'm all on board with what Hogarth brought to the band. And I think he made them into something even better than they were. So I'm definitely a thumbs up.
All right. I'll go thumbs up. Oh, there we go. Thumbs down for Parish. All right.
Now the negative side. Leonard Skinner, I'm looking at you. This one, Johnny Van Zant replaced his brother. He's been in the band for 37 years and many albums. but I don't care. No Ronnie, no Skinner, as far as I'm concerned. His writing was key to those classic original 5 albums. And without Ronnie, the soul is gone from this band for me. So that's a subjective thing. So I'm a big no on Skinner.
Right. I'm gonna go thumbs up, I think, from that one. Oh, here we go. Couple of sideways.
We got some moving thumbs here. REO Speedwagon. Dave Amato has been on guitar for 35 years and a little bit of new stuff. Again, I don't care. No Gary Richrath, no REO. His guitar playing and his songwriting are way too important to what I consider classic REO sound. So sorry, Dave. You're no Gary, bud. Down for REO.
I'm going to go down on all lineups.
I figured you would.
I'm going to go up, but because he's missed as a songwriter. I don't think he's missed as a guitarist, but I think he's missed as a writer.
That's a controversial opinion. That's interesting.
Yes, it is. Very contrarian.
My final one, negative, the Guess Who. Derek Sharp has been there for 16 years. Does anybody know who this guy even is? I can tell you that Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman certainly do, because the lawsuit is in progress. This is possibly the best example of a cash-in cover band that, despite Gary Peterson's occasional involvement, has nothing to do with the Guess Who, and more power to Burton and Randy, and I hope they win their lawsuit, because this thing is a travesty. They have zero legitimacy. Big time down.
Yep.
Double down
that one.
to Guess Who.
I don't even know how to answer that. I don't know how to do it, because I agree that it's not really legitimate, but that new record was actually pretty good. So what are you going to do? I mean, I like the record. I can't help it.
Yeah.
That'd be a sideways, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, my bottom line, someone may be technically and legally a band member, but in the end, it all comes down to each fan's individual preferences. So it's really a subjective thing. The band can do what they want, but the fans are either going to be on board or not based on our own biases. So I throw my own rules out. They're used as a starting point, and then I say, yeah, not in this case. So
Yeah.
that's my take on it.
Wicked. Thanks, Bill. Butch, what have you got?
I mean, I agree with what a lot of Bill said in terms of the criteria. For me, it's such a question of personal taste, really, in a lot of ways. I mean, we all have different opinions on this. There are bands that I don't hold to the same standard I hold other bands to, because I like the band more. Like, I'll argue every day with, let's start with Kiss, since that's a really contentious one. And I mean, here's a case of a band where, Ace and Peter just really weren't pulling their weight come the time of the initial farewell tour. And I don't have anything against Ace and Peter. I love them. They were an essential part of the band, but I don't feel like band members should hold other band members back from keeping going. And Paul and Gene, let's face it, are anyone who loves Kiss, they had the whole 4 personalities thing. They were all important to the sound of the band, but at the end of the day, it was still Paul and Gene's band. I mean, those guys ran the ship. They wrote the bulk of the material. Most of the classics are theirs. I mean, Ace has got a few. Peter really didn't write anything other than Beth. He was handed songs to sing. So, I mean, I like Peter as a drummer, in the 70s. I think he's an underrated drummer, but the fact of the matter is his skills just diminished to the point where he was using triggers, and we'll get into we'll save the arguments for Paul Stanley using tapes another day. But I just feel like, Eric Singer and Tommy had been in the band for years and years. Both of them contributed to, whether you like the records or not. Eric has been there for, 3 records over the span of time. Tommy was there for 2 that they did. I happen to like them. A lot of people don't. A lot of people think they're not legitimate Kiss records. Again, I still think it's a Paul and Gene thing. Like, it's their band, and if they wanted to keep it going, like, why would you just sit at home when this is what you love to do. So for me, I mean, these guys are solid players, and dedicated to it. They show up, they do their job, they do it well. I mean, what can you do in terms of, I mean, they're not going to win over everyone. There are still people that make comments all the time about Tommy Thayer, picking up Gene's laundry and this and that, which I think is kind of like disgraceful, but that's just my opinion. I get it, man. Some people
I think the spirit of Peter Criss is about to attack you. That's all I can say.
I know. You heard it. He's like, hey, man. He doesn't want to be replaced.
Yeah.
But that works for me. I mean, I thought they were really solid live. They helped the band extend their career another 20 plus years. Really good live. And, for me, like, Tommy contributed a bunch of songs over the course of 2 records, which I think are pretty good records. So it's not like they just became a total, like, tour circuit band, let me flop over to, like, Foreigner, who, Lou Graham's the only one left, and he barely shows up anymore. I'm not saying that lineup's not good, but they haven't really done much music. I think they did 1 record of original music since Kelly Hansen joined the band. At this point, they're just a touring band, and they're just like kind of like a cover band in a way. But people go. I mean, people still go see the band. I mean, they're still playing big places, albeit in in package tours. But for me, like, it's not, without Lou and without like really good new music, it just doesn't fall together for me, like where I'm really interested in what Foreigner's doing. One of the bands where it did work for me, and this is because I love the band, and if they didn't have new members, they probably wouldn't be doing it, is Angel. For years, Frank tried to get the band back together in different formations, him and Barry and Felix, and Punky stayed out of music for years and years and years. And when they came back, I mean, I think it's awesome that he and Frank are making music. Unfortunately, Barry's got health issues with arthritis and can't play. So what are you going to do? I mean, if he can't do it, but you have guys that, I mean, they're still arguably making music that's as good as a lot of the music they made in the 70s. For me, Punky Metal still plays like a motherfucker. Like, I think he might be playing better now, his lead work, than he did then. And I love the work he did then. So I think it's cool. I mean, he's got this, they have extra guys in the band. Unfortunately, Felix isn't with them, and Greg's not with them, which I think is a big loss. But the guys they have are good. Like Charlie Calv is a great keyboard player. And they're making good music that lives up to the legacy of the band. So for me, that was, those guys have been doing it. And if it wasn't, if those dudes weren't in the band, there wouldn't be a band. So I want that band to be around. They're great live. The records are good. Frank and Punky were 2 of the 3 main writers in the band that made that band sound. They're still there. So for me, it's a legitimate thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like, there's bands, just to throw a few quick ones out there, that I think are still making great records that you might argue that it's not legitimate because it's not the classic lineup, but Styx, Larry Gallon and Styx, like Crash of the Crown and The Mission are killer records, I think. Like, I think those are great records. I think the last couple Kansas records have been good. I mean, Steve Walsh can't sing anymore. He retired because he can't do it. So what's a band to do? I mean, you want to keep going. Take it from someone that like was in a band that no one in the band wants to do it anymore, and it's like, now I'm stuck. Well, I mean, these guys can get musicians to play, so more power to them. When I have a problem with it is, like, let's look at like Thin Lizzy trying to regroup or whatever. Once Brian Downey was gone from that equation, and we were just left with Scott. I mean, I love Scott Gorham, but I knew it wasn't going to be long till the name changed, which it did, to the Black Star Riders. But it's just not. Phil is such a personality that you can't. I don't think you can replace him and call it Thin Lizzy and have it work. I know they might still do shows once in a while, but man, I don't think it's Thin Lizzy at all. They play well live. I saw the Black Star Riders. I saw Thin Lizzy when it was, the John Sykes, Scott Gorham thing. They were great, but it's not Thin Lizzy without Phil. That's just the way it is. I like Ricky Warwick a lot, but no one can stand in Phil's place. There are some bands that you cannot, legitimately call yourselves that band without like Typo Negative, smartly not regrouping with another singer. You can't replace Peter Steele. Number one, the main songwriter in the band and the leader of the band. Number two, totally unique voice. So, a band like that, I wish that Peter was still alive, but I'm glad they're not. I wouldn't accept a Typo Negative without Peter Steele in the band. I don't think there's anyone you could put into that band that I would look at that and say, that's legit. I don't care if it's someone that I'm a big fan of, like outside of Typo Negative. It's not Typo Negative without Peter Steele, period.
Yeah.
Another one I have a huge problem with, although they make records, is Molly Hatchet. And the reason I have a big problem with Molly Hatchet is because Bobby Ingram takes out a lineup of Molly Hatchet that has one guitar player in the band, one, live. He's got a keyboard player in the band that's been around since the 80s. He's been around since the 80s, but no original members and one guitar player. Once Dave Lubeck died, Bobby just goes out with this one guitar lineup, which it was a three guitar band. Like, I don't understand it. To me, I think it is disrespectful to the music to not be able to perform it in a way that it's meant to be heard. At least have two guitar players. Like, I get it, money's tight, but you can't be that egotistical and selfish that you wouldn't take the band out and properly present the music. I saw them with a one guitar lineup when Phil McCormick was still alive and singing for them, and they were awful, I thought. So that's what, again, a lot of this comes down to how much you like the band or whatever. I mean, like I said, I'm a huge Kiss fan. I love Paul and Gene, and I love Ace and Peter too, but I've loved every lineup of that band. So, I grew up with them. So, I don't know. Like, that's where I stand on some of this stuff. I mean, there's other scenarios, like Grand Funk hasn't done new music in forever. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say they're illegitimate, though, because Don and Mel are still there. So, I mean, if they want to play, maybe it's why they know it's wise not to make music without Mark. But, I mean, Kulick was a great guitar player while he was in, he was in the band, and he's a great player, so why not? Again, I don't begrudge anyone wanting to go out and do what they love and make a living. Just, I don't have to, that's the great thing about this free society of ours. We don't have to go if we don't like it. And, for me, some bands are legit and some bands aren't without those key guys.
Well, let's rattle through these ones really quick. Grand Funk, thumbs up or thumbs down? Mm-hmm. All right. Molly Hatchet. Thin Lizzy. All right. Parish. Kansas. All right. Yeah, Styx. Yeah, Foreigner. Wow. We didn't do Kiss. Kiss. I'm about here. I'll explain later. Angel. All right. Very cool. All right, Todd, what do you got for us?
Okay. Well, my criteria of I assembled a list of 3 guys that I think are successful and that deserve to be thought of as in the same way that the original guys were. But my criteria for that is if they can write. If the person that they replaced wrote and that they can write, that's one thing I think that's important. The other thing is I think it helps if they're in the same role. Like if you've got a band that's got a singing bass player and then they replace them with another singing bass player, or if it's vocalist for vocalist or drummer for drummer, or if it's, a keyboardist that I'll give an example of one that I didn't think worked after I give my three that I think do. But if it's a keyboardist that wrote replaced with just a keyboardist, things like that. But the first one I'm going to talk about is Martin's favorite band, Chicago. They had Peter Cetera for 19 years, 1967 through 1986, 19 years. And then they had another guy named Jason Scheff, and he was there for 30 years. He was there from 1986 to 2016. Jason Scheff, the son of Jerry Scheff, the bass player for Elvis and played on the LA Woman album with the Doors. And so some pedigree there. A tenor singer who plays the bass, you kind of drop him in that slot and you think, even if you're cynical, if you see the band, you think, oh, okay, well, that still feels like the band because it's, they replaced one guy in the same role. So that one's relatively controversial because a lot of people don't like that guy and a lot of people don't like what happened to Chicago just prior to that. So I can understand that. But in that case, I think that was a pretty successful one. Do we want to give thumbs up or down on that one? Yeah, I figured.
Bring back
I
Peter.
think they should have quit after Terry Kath died.
It's complicated. Yeah.
The second one I was going to talk about was Steve Hogarth, and Bill really, really covered that one. Fish was in that band for 8 years. Steve was in that band has been in the band for 35 years. One of the things that I think is interesting about what happened to Marillion when Steve Hogarth joined was that the sound of the band didn't change at all, but the singer changed dramatically. So I thought that was kind of interesting. If you could take Steve Hogarth off of that first album that they did with him, Season's End, and replace him with Fish, the band would sound the same. So I think that's a really successful one. We've already voted on that one. And the next one I want to talk about is Lindsey Buckingham. So Fleetwood Mac, kind of a crazy timeline. Their first era was 67 through 71, 4 short years, where they've got Peter Green, they've got Bob Weston, Jeremy Spencer, Danny Kerwin, Christine Perfect. And that lasts 4 years. And then they have Bob Welsh, a singer-songwriter, step into that role. And step into the guitarist-singer role, anyway. And that only lasts 4 years. It seems like more because there's, quite a few albums with him. And then you get Lindsey Buckingham in 1975, who completely redefines the band and stays for 40 years. I think that is a successful one because I think that band, without him and without Stevie Nicks joining, that would be a band that probably would have continued to sell about $200,000 or 300,000 records each time, which is where they were. They were getting ready to be dropped by Warner Brothers, and so I think that is an example of a successful one. Now, what happened after Lindsey was unceremoniously fired, which I wear my "I Stand with Lindsey" T-shirt today, replacing him with Mike Campbell and Neil Finn. 2 thumbs down. And I like Neil Finn. I like both of those guys, but that was a terrible idea. But what does everybody think about Lindsey Buckingham?
Definitely thumbs up. Yeah,
he's good, and I love Bob Welch, so I kind of hate to push.
I do too.
Side, but
I do too. Yeah.
It was an upgrade. Sorry, Bob.
Yeah.
Now, one that I think didn't work, Patrick Moraz replacing Mike Pinder in the Moody Blues. Pinder was one of the voices of the Moody Blues, and he was out of all of the really kind of mystical sounding things that they used to do. He was probably the most out there. He was probably the biggest hippie. So they replaced him with Patrick Moraz, and who didn't bring anything to the table but playing the keyboards. Very good keyboardist that he is. But I remember when he joined the band was gushing in interviews, saying, well, he brings virtuosity to this band, which is something that we don't have because we're not virtuosos. And then when he got tired of being in the band, Patrick Moraz came out and said, well, those guys can't play. They can't, take them forever to do anything because they can't play. And so so I've always thought that Patrick Moraz was a big thumbs down in Moody Blues.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably accurate. That's probably where I am too. be just a little bit down.
Yeah.
There's a couple other ones I can mention that I won't go at length into, but Midge Ure replacing John Fox in Ultravox, that's a thumbs up from me. Redefined the band. I think an example of one that didn't go well, not because they didn't try it, but because they didn't stick with it, was Ray Wilson replacing Phil Collins in Genesis. I don't think that was the best idea, but I think when you make a decision that's as bold as that one, you keep on with it more than just one time. There were other people that were up for that position that have that people who knew and that were more common names. I thought they should have chose Jack Hughes from Wang Chung. That was considered because he's friends with Tony Banks. But I don't think that any replacement for John Anderson has ever worked, and I think it still doesn't work. John Anderson, and yes, John has a very distinct voice where he's very high-pitched and angelic, but at the same time kind of gritty, and he's got a little bit of swagger for a guy that sings really high. And everybody that they've replaced him with has just been a guy that sings really high. So yeah, I say thumbs down on all of those.
Yeah, I'm gonna go sideways on that one. Yeah. All right. Very cool. Very cool. Thanks for that, Parish. What have you got?
Well, to start with, I have no rules. Mine is very fickle. Really, it's just how I feel. And the first one I'm going to go with is a band that I'm going to go and see in the summer. And I phoned round 4 or 5 friends to see if they wanted to come as well, and they said no. There's only one original member left. Don't want to go. And that really shocked me because that band is ACDC. So not to consider Brian Johnson because he's not one of the original members just shocked me, really. Now, to me, how long do you have to be in a band and how many albums do you have to make before you get established? You've also got to look at the situation behind why he joined. It wasn't as if anybody fell out with Bon or he was sacked. You know, it was a tragedy. So, okay, if Ed said there's only two kind of key members left, I might have understood it, but I just couldn't understand how anybody could say there's only one original member left. And if I then look at why am I going, I mean, Stevie Young's been on and off in the band for a long time. Member of the Young family, I think he's paid his dues, and again, a bit like the Bond scenario with Malcolm no longer with us. I think he fits in, and then the others, for personal reasons, don't want to be in the band anymore, or certainly don't want to tour. I think they're still listed as band members in Phil Rudd and Cliff Williams, but they don't want to tour. So, you know, okay, so they've got a couple of hired hands, but for me, I think it is still enough to have Brian Johnson and Angus there, and so that's enough for me. And it's probably the last time I'm going to see them anyway. But I couldn't believe anybody would not include Brian Johnson as being accepted in the ACDC after 44 years. So that's my first one. So thumbs up or down?
Thumbs up on that one for sure.
All those changes are made out of necessity, so I can't
exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, honestly, Brian Johnson was there for them. They were the most successful they ever were.
Yeah,
Brian was in the bands. I mean, I love Bond. Everyone, you gotta love that stuff too. But Brian Johnson, I mean, their most successful period was, you know, Back in Black through, you know, in that era. I mean, that album
to add some
more than the rest of the catalog.
To add some historical context, I remember nobody complaining about it at all in 1980 about that. I mean, everybody was just happy for them, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And excited to be on this freight train that's going up and up. So I don't remember anybody complaining about continuing on or anything like that. And the funny thing is I mean, they were considered a heavy metal band, but when you think back, and we covered this in Metal Evolution a lot when we talked about, and it just sort of dawned on me when we did it in Metal Evolution, this idea of how important an extreme voice is to tilt that meter to call something heavy metal. Like that was his voice was super extreme in a commercial band in 1980, right? Brian's. Mm. And Bond's was even a little extreme, but it was more like a mischievous Dennis the Menace voice, right? But Brian sounded like a death metal guy coming into, you know, the normal commercial world, right? And that's thinking back now, it's like that feels to me like 30% of the reason we considered them a heavy metal band in 1980.
Yeah, totally. All right, the next one is probably my most fickle, which is Sweet. So Sweet split up in 1980. Andee Scott reformed them in 85. Mick Tucker was in the band, I think, for a couple of years, but ever since then, it's just been Andee Scott, and in the main a series of sort of session musicians. The drummer Bruce Bisland has been with them since '92, so I guess you'd say he's probably paid his dues being with them that long. But I wouldn't go and see them. They weren't Sweet as far as I was concerned. And the thing that changed it was Paul Manzi joined them about 2 or 3 years ago. And Paul came from Cats in Space, and I love Cats in Space. So all of a sudden, I was interested because they had a decent singer. And a singer I kind of admired and liked. So I went and saw them. Really enjoyed it. I kind of then took the view that Andee Scott, he deserves to make some money out of touring and playing. And if people want to go and see Sweet in that form, why shouldn't he make money? Why shouldn't he still continue as a career? So for a long time, I dismissed them and wouldn't see them up until about 2 years ago. And then all of a sudden, because I like the singer, it changed. And all of a sudden, I'm now pro Sweet now. I think they're good, and I think he, you know, as I say, I think Andee Scott deserves to be out there and playing. So so that's my second one.
All right,
Parish,
I'll go thumbs down on that one. I saw the American Sweet twice, and it wasn't Sweet. Right. So
yeah, I was gonna ask you, Parish, how did you feel about, you know, Steve having his version of the band that toured at the same time, and now they're playing without him now, and they're solid live, but it's kind of stupid that they call themselves Sweet. I don't know, legally, I guess.
Well, I had the same view of Steve's Sweet as I did of Andee's. I didn't think either were legit, and I wouldn't go and see them. I think the one thing with Andee that's also changed is now he's the only one left. If anybody deserves to be out there making some money out of the name, it's him. Particularly as he was one of the key songwriters as well. So yeah, I can't really explain, other than being fickle, why all of a sudden I've changed my mind, but I have.
Okay, cool.
The next one we've already spoken about, which was Uriah Heep, and you may remember at the time I did that. And the reason for that was I just lost interest with them when Bernie Shaw joined them, and I like Bernie Shaw, and I knew him from Grand Prix. I'd seen him quite a few times when he was in Grand Prix, so I kind of respected him, but I just didn't like those first couple of albums. So as a result of that, I just stopped going, not particularly because of him, but because I just wasn't interested anymore. And it wasn't until the last album came out, which I think is an absolute cracker of an album, that's kind of convinced me actually I've been probably missing out for 35 or whatever it is years since he joined, actually. So I've been going back and having a listen to those intermediate albums and really enjoying them. So if I did it purely on today, it would be that. But if I did it up until last year, it would probably have been that. So hence I felt it was probably fair to do the middle ground at the moment. But I am seeing him next week supporting Judas Priest. So I'm really looking forward to that, actually, because that's the first time I've seen him, I think, since about 1982, 83. So I'm looking forward to that.
Cool.
My next one's probably a bit of an odd one, odd in two ways, because most people won't be familiar with them, and that's the Boomtown Rats. So the Boomtown Rats reformed probably 10 years ago nearly now. And they've got three of the key members. They've got Bob Geldof, the lead singer, who's obviously the main force behind the band and the main songwriter. They've got Simon Crowe, who's the lead guitarist. They've got Pete Brookett, who was the bass player. So you'd say three of the core members. But they're missing Johnny Fingers, the keyboard player, and Joey Cox. But in particular, Johnny Fingers. And they're not the Boomtown Rats without Johnny Fingers, as far as I'm concerned. He was always, back in the day, the player that I liked the most. He was the one who's, even with Bob Geldof, he was the one who had the most personality on stage. He wrote their best song, in my view, with I Don't Like Mondays. And to me, they are not the Boomtown Rats without Johnny Fingers. And I went and saw them last year at a festival to see if it would change my mind, and I came away even more convinced they're not the Boomtown Rats, even though they've got three of the original members. They're not the Boomtown Rats without Johnny Fingers. And I have no reason, I don't know the reason why he's not in the band. I don't know if they fell out or he's just does, it's such a long time, he's doing something else now. So I don't know the history behind it, but without Johnny Fingers, there's no Boomtown Rats in my view.
All right. Very cool. Yeah, Boomtown Rats, I'd say no. You know what? My problem with Boomtown Rats is I love the first three albums, and then after that they changed so radically, and even the reunion stuff, I don't like the writing on it at all. So I'm like so discombobulated by just not liking the records, right? That it's like the members don't even sort of matter to me. It's like I want them to write kind of in that fine art of surfacing zone would be perfect for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Troops, right? Kind of thing. So, all right. Okay, so I'll wrap up here with, all of these I think have been talked about. And I'll just go through them quickly. I got some props. So, yeah, I was a big thumbs down on this. I mean, the theme of mine is that these big personalities, but it's like the lead singer is super important. We didn't really sort of key in on that. To me, the lead singer, I did a whole podcast episode called Lead Singer is the Band or something like that. And to me, in every case, the lead singer is like 50% of the band, except in the odd situation where they're a real wallflower and they don't write anything and blah, 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 right? But essentially, I have a way higher tolerance for replacing legendary guitarists who write most of the music in a band. To me, I'd be fine with that as long as that voice is there. That's the one thing you can't sort of replace. So yeah, this whole thing with losing, no Phil on vocals, no Phil on lyrics, no Phil on bass. That's kind of like that's one of the biggest travesties of all this. Foreigner is the other massive travesty, especially when Mick Jones isn't even there. This is just such a huge, huge travesty. And yeah, I don't care. You can have that many guys in the band, but if you just make one record and it's this kind of music that is a very fragile chemistry. What Foreigner does and how they got that magic is just this very subtle mix of these semi-boring personalities doing this kind of pomp rock Bad Company thing. It's like you can't reproduce that without those personalities, right? I took out a Yes album because this is a situation where I kind of like the idea that John Davison has been there. He's working it. He's writing, plays a little guitar. He's a little bit of a weird fairy folk guy like John Anderson in a way. So I think they've managed that hard stability position of the lead singer thing. And then it's like, oh look, people are dying all over the place. We have to replace them. So it's the lineup is pretty non-legitimate, but everybody kind of has history, and they've been doing it slowly enough that I think even bringing back Billy Sherwood to me is fine. I think Billy Sherwood is a solid Yes member. So that's an interesting one where the one I held up is actually the disastrous in for one album in and out Benoit situation. But John Davison. The only thing I don't like about John Davison is when I interviewed them once for one of their recent albums, he for some reason would only do an email interview, and that made me suspicious that he's like not very smart or something, or not articulate, or can't explain himself, right? Kind of bothered me, right? It made me think, is this guy kind of an airhead? But he is a writer. He came from a prog band. He plays blah blah blah. Uriah Heep, I am so on board with Uriah Heep with Bernie Shaw because he has been there for like 40 years or whatever it is, 10 albums. He's a writer. He's a great personality. He's an amazing interview. And more than anything, he's a great vocalist, but he's great live. And Parish, so this will be your first time with Bernie?
It will, yeah. Well, certainly with Uriah Heep, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's amazing because I can't say that he's going to be incredible because the last time I saw them was a good 4, 5, 6 years ago or something. I actually drove down to Connecticut and gave them an award for the Metal Hall of Fame on stage, which was really cool when they were supporting Priest. But yeah, he is, and this is a band we all talk about as being one of the greatest bands in terms of an old band making some of their best music now, right? Skynyrd, I'm on board because he's a Van Zandt. He sounds like him. He looks like him. I don't really care. I don't know how much. I'm not even a huge Skynyrd fan of the old days. I'm as much for the new days anyways. I just didn't feel they had much personality. So I'm fine with this situation. They're a heavier band now. They're more of like a Lynyrd Skynyrd goes to the gym band now. But that's fine. But yeah, I think he's completely legitimate. He's got he fits that role personally. He comes to it naturally. I don't think he's faking anything about being that guy. So yeah, I think Johnny's done an amazing job in that band. Kiss is a funny one, and I never thought of this until Butch was talking about it. But I guess the thing I like these albums, but I think the thing I realized that I'm not particularly happy with is that you felt a major personality boost when Vinnie Vincent came in or Bruce came in or Eric Carr came in. I don't think you feel that with Tommy and Eric Singer. I feel like they're in there. They've been there for a long time. Revenge was a great album, so we know Eric was part of that. But I don't think you're feeling you're noticing this new dimension to the band. It really becomes the Paul and Gene show, and they do it great, and it's great you've got these members in the band. So that's why I went a little sideways on that. And then my last one is this is funny because it reminds me of Parish's ACDC exposition there, because it just drives me crazy when people come in and say Deep Purple's got one original member in the band, right? Because obviously this is another band who did the lineup changes very smartly along the way. They had some shocking things they had to do from time to time. They had to replace the Mark II singer. They had to replace the Mark II singer. They had to replace the Mark II singer twice. They had to replace Recchia. And that was a shocking choice because it was an American, but he was there and they made a bunch of great records. So as it even stands now, you've got Roger, you've got Ian, Don Airey, who everybody loves Don Airey. He was a perfect choice there. So I think they managed those changes all great. But it is funny that they have one original member of the band. So yeah, if I could say anything, just as a wrap up, to me, I get really excited about this in either a positive or negative way when it's all about the lead singer. To me, that's the position you can't fool around with in any way. We can get around songwriting, right? We know songwriting's a murky thing anyways, with credits and buying a song from a song doctor and then not even crediting them because you paid them a little bit of money, so you just take the credit for the songwriting. Or we know Ozzy just taking credit in a big way for songwriting and stuff like that. So we know there's all sorts of stuff that can happen there. So it doesn't bother me that much. But yeah, that voice, you cannot replace that voice, and especially if it's a big personality. So I don't know. Did I bring up anybody new there? Deep Purple. Any thumbs up or thumbs down on Deep Purple? Yeah. All right. Cool. So that's what I've got. Anybody got anything they want to add, or should we wrap up, or what do you think?
I've got two I'd like to mention. One is come back to, and one is new. Mm-hmm. The one I'd like to talk about that's new is Queen with Adam Lambert, because obviously the situation's very different to any of the others. And I'm a huge Queen fan. I went and saw them with Paul Rodgers as well, which kind of was a bit flat. And I've been bowled over with them playing with Adam Lambert, and the reason for it is It's all about the show and it's all about the songs. It's almost like going to the theatre in many ways to celebrate the songs. But the reason I raised it is because there's a strange dimension to the Adam Lambert in that I'm on Twitter quite a lot. And if I talk about Queen and Adam Lambert, I get hundreds of, I normally get half a dozen people reacting to anything I say, and that's a lot. But if I mention Adam Lambert, I get hundreds of people from all over the world commenting on how he's changed their life and how important he is to them as individuals. And there's a whole side of his being part of Queen that I think has helped relaunch Queen around the world, along with the film, but in a way that maybe is unexpected. And there's a connection to Adam Lambert that probably the likes of us don't see, that is, as I say, people from all over, South America, from Eastern Europe, from Russia, and some of the comments they get are quite breathtaking about their lives and how Adam Lambert is the shining beacon, if you like, in their lives. So I think for most of us, for me it would be that, because I've really enjoyed seeing them. But I think for most people who like Queen, it's probably either that or that. But I think there's a dimension there with Adam Lambert that's just so totally different than maybe any of the other bands that we've spoken about in some ways.
Interesting. I'd go thumbs down, and I was going to ask everybody, like, what is an opportunity missed? And I think Queen is the big opportunity missed, where I think it would have been a great situation had they replaced Freddie and just put out an album a year and a half later, kind of thing, and kept going. So it bothers me. It bothers me that with Adam Lambert they haven't made any albums, because to me, if you don't make music, you're not a serious person. You're not intellectual or creatively curious, or all those positive adjectives you could apply to people. If you ain't going to make new music, then it bothers me, right? It makes me suspicious of you being in this for the right reasons or whatever, because I think the right reason is always to make an album. That's just my thought. But
and
your comment. Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. Sorry, Parish.
No, you go, Butch.
I was just gonna say, for me, like I like that people, especially younger people, are getting a chance to at least go see that music. And Adam has an aspect to him that fits. It really does fit with what Freddie was doing. But the thing that he's missing is Adam has more of a, to me, it's like a pop, more of a Broadway kind of voice almost, than Freddie had a grit still to his voice. There was a rock thing going on with Fred, like that's not there at all. Now, to be fair, I've only seen a couple of spot performances like online or on TV with Adam, but it's just not the right voice for me. Like there's no Freddie, for all his range and his flair and the drama in his voice, he still was a rock singer at the end of the day, and Adam Lambert is not.
Well, nor did you write any of those lyrics.
Right. So it's.
But I think the point you make, Butch, though, is what I would come into, is that he's brought in a completely new generation to Queen. And he's not a rock singer. Seeing him live, it is a theatre. It's like being on Broadway, which in some ways in my eyes validates it a bit, because they're not trying to be Queen or do a. They're not trying to be what Thin Lizzy did in trying to make it, a replacement. It's almost like a show, really. But I don't know. I've just been shocked over the responses I get from YouTube, really. By he's clearly connecting to people in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And the other one I was going to talk about was Kiss. Hence why I wore the T-shirt. And Kiss is a similar thing, because. I never saw them with the original lineup. I saw them 4 times in the 80s, but I've seen them more times with that lineup. And the reason for it is again is the show. I know so many people who of my son's age and their wives and their friends who are just into Kiss for the show. They're not particularly into Kiss for the music, they're into Kiss for the show. And they all go and see them every time they play, because it's like the circus has come to town. And so from that point of view, I don't think I'm not saying Gene and Paul were blameless, but I don't think they're the real reason why Ace and Peter aren't in the band. I think Ace and Peter are the reason they're not in the band. So if they're going to do the show, the biggest criticism I've heard about Kiss has been, well, if they'd worn different makeup, we might have found it more acceptable. Well, if they're worn different makeup, the people wouldn't have come to the shows. People come to the shows because they want to see the people in the original makeup. And certainly from a point of view, I mean, you're right from what you said, Martin, about they haven't got the same charisma than maybe some of the people who, like an Eric Carr or a Bruce Kulick had. But when you see them live, they're just very professional and they just play their parts perfectly, and it's hard to not get drawn into the experience, really. So I kind of give Kiss a pass, really, because the show's just so good. And I'm hoping they haven't really given up, because I'd go and see them again tomorrow if they came back.
Yeah. Funny. Bill, Todd, anything to add?
No, I will say on the Queen thing, I am happy for Brian and Roger. No matter, Adam Lambert aside, I'm happy that those guys are able to go out there and play, and that he's allowing them to do that in a way that they can bring back the songs to the people that still want to hear them.
Yeah.
I agree with Martin, though, completely on that. As far as new material, I would like to see them actually put out a new album to see if he has anything to bring to the table, and to see if Brian and Roger have anything left in the songwriting tank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think with Queen, you have to remember too that some of this is because John Deacon said no. John Deacon didn't want to replace Freddie. And he even got to the point where he said that he didn't want to perform with anybody else but Freddie. So that's part of it. And unfortunately.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if we solved anything here, but let us know in the comments below what you guys think of all this. Which of these, we didn't talk about Nazareth. That's another one that's a bit of a contentious one. But yeah, there's lots of bands out there. I'm sure you guys will bring some of them up. Let us know which ones of these and which of the new ones you're on board and which ones were just kind of a bridge too far. And if you want to join these panels, you can join our Patreon situation, and then Marco's really good at scheduling all this and everything. But like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And thanks a lot, guys. We shall see you again on the next one. Talk to you later. Bye now.
See you guys. Pleasure.